and welcome to the studio. We have the godfather of the NFL draft. We just heard that is Mel Kiper Jr., who's very calm, especially talking about the quarterbacks this week. We also have our NFL insider, Adam Schefter, our draft analyst, Field Yates, as well as Matt Miller, and they're all fresh off their trip from Green Bay. Let's get right to it. Mel has given out his grades on every team's draft. We'll bring them all to you right here. We have 5 total A grades here, but only 1 A+. And that goes to, yeah, you guessed it, the Browns. Mel, why? Why Cleveland?
Why? How about Shedeur #1, okay? Shedeur Sanders. But how about the Mason Graham edition, okay? We talk about needing another wide 9. How about a guy inside that can collapse the pocket and really complement Myles Garrett? That would be Mason Graham. And then Carson Schefter. You make that trade, you allow the Jacksonville Jaguars to move up to get Travis Hunter. You move down to get Mason Graham, but then you get Carson Schefter and the first-round pick next year. And then you add weapons, okay? Running backs. Dylan Gabriel added to the mix at 3 in the 3rd round. But how about the other 3rd-round pick, Harold Fannin Jr., who's going to have an H-back. You catch the ball down the field, had big game after big game, including a game against Penn State where he was outstanding. He had a couple running backs in Quinshawn Judkins and, like I said, Dylan Sampson. So overall, they hit a lot of boxes, checked a lot of boxes in terms of needs. They got a lot of good players, but to top it off, guys, with Shedeur Sanders, after you took Dylan Gabriel. Now, this has happened before. Remember, Heath Schuler, Gus Frerotte. Gus Frerotte in the 7th round, better than the top 5 pick, right? RG3, 2nd overall. Kirk Cousins, 4th round. Kirk Cousins better in the 4th round. So it has happened before. Will it happen again? We'll see.
I need someone in my life to believe in me the way Mel Kiper Jr. believes in Shedeur Sanders.
I believe in you, like Mel believes in
I would appreciate that. Yeah. Sanders was the 6th quarterback off the board, but you know who else was the 6th quarterback off the board? Dan Marino, and that turned out really well for the Dolphins as well as a quarterback coming out of Pitt. Shefty, so the Shedeur Sanders experience, it dominated the conversation for 3 days. What happened here in the process as we watched Thursday play out, Friday play out, and then finally Saturday?
I think there are a few things to keep in mind here, Kevin. Number one, there are only a select group of teams that intended to use a high pick on Shedeur Sanders. Most of them did not view him as a high pick in that round. The other teams went in different directions. And then you consider in the fact that some people felt like the draft process where he didn't throw at the Senior Bowl, didn't throw at the Combine, interviewed poorly with some teams, not others. All of that contributed to him falling down. I think it was a confluence of factors all coming together, in addition to the fact that it did seem a little personal in the end to make Shedeur Sanders fall to the 5th round and the 144th overall selection. It was like a snowball going down the mountain that just kept gaining more and more speed until it stopped finally in Cleveland at pick 144.
Okay, let's address the elephants in the room. There are going to be plenty in that quarterback room in Cleveland, all right? Deshaun Watson, Achilles injury, may not even see him in 2025. It feels like the Browns have moved on, right? You bring in Joe Flacco. You acquire Kenny Pickett, former 1st-round pick. You draft Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round.
Yep.
And then you go Shedeur Sanders. How's this going to play out in the quarterback room?
Shedeur Sanders is going to have to earn his keep within this quarterback room. Just because the Browns drafted you does not mean that your role specifically within this room is secure. If we look back in recent years at how NFL teams have addressed the quarterback room, many of them have carried at most 3 quarterbacks. There have been a couple of exceptions that have carried 4, Kevin, but it could be that one of these 4 players is the odd man out right now. I don't think Shedeur Sanders is looking for my advice, but I would say this: if there is a lesson learned from this past weekend, it's you have now landed in your spot, and you have the opportunity to potentially rewrite how people perceive you, because the NFL spoke loudly and clearly about how they saw Shedeur Sanders over the weekend, Kevin, at the most important position in team sports. If a team believes that player can impact winning at a high level, you don't last until 144. So now is the opportunity for Shedeur Sanders to say, you made a grave error. The Cleveland Browns are the only team, Matt, that are lucky enough to reap the rewards.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think this is an opportunity for growth, both for Shedeur and for his dad, Dion, who was very involved in this process, because obviously the NFL at some point decided the risk was not worth the reward or the attention that was going to come with it, especially once we got to the point of the draft where he was going to be a backup quarterback. You will allow a certain matter of distraction or attention for your starting quarterback. That's to be expected. A first-round pick, that's to be expected. but how much distraction do you want for a backup quarterback? Can you bring him into that room and expect him to follow the leader, so to speak? So this will be an interesting situation. I do think there are veterans here that he can learn from. Joe Flacco, who's been through the highs of being a first-round pick, to the lows of having his replacement drafted in the first round in Lamar Jackson. Kenny Pickett, a first-round pick, who's now on his third team. So there's some opportunity for growth here, and there's some very good people for Shedeur Sanders to learn under. I think this is a good spot for that. And I am excited to see none of these quarterbacks, guys, are tied to that starting quarterback spot. Joe Flacco's not making starter money. Kenny Pickett's not making starter money. So this will be a truly open quarterback competition is the way I understand it. All four quarterbacks are going to have the chance to rise to the top. And I personally can't wait to see who does end up being that QB1 in Cleveland.
Shefty, how does this play out? What are you hearing about how the Browns are approaching now this offseason with all the quarterbacks?
Kevin, they're a team that has gone from not having really any quarterback hope to all of a sudden having a lot of quarterback options. And not everybody can make this team. Not everybody can be on the field. And I would think if there's a quarterback injury during training camp, that one of the first teams that another team might call would be the Cleveland Browns. They're obviously going to have to take a long, hard look at Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders. They like the veterans of Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett. And I think we go back to what Jimmy Haslam, the Browns owner, said about Deshaun Watson. He called it a swing and a miss. I think we could almost take Deshaun Watson out of the equation, leave it to the other four, and one of those four will not wind up making it.
The only thing that I would say is that in some ways we can focus on these four quarterbacks for the next 4 or 5 months, which I'm sure we do a lot of that. It might be missing the forest through the trees because the Browns are now equipped with 2 2026 first-round picks. Potentially 2 very high 2026 first-round picks. And the end goal for this front office might not have been the guys that they took this weekend or Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett, but a true franchise quarterback option a year from right now.
Okay, and by the way, Arch Manning could be a part of that draft if he decides to go. Schefter, you want to jump in?
Well, I was just going to say, on the morning of the draft, I had a couple of people tell me that Cleveland was focused on quarterback in 2026, not 2025, even though they wound up going ahead and taking 2 quarterbacks in 2025.
And then we go to the New York Giants. Again, this is going to be the Jaxson Dart draft. Make no mistake about that. But overall, another team that landed a lot of good players. Started with Abdul Carter, could be a 12 to 15 sack a year guy. But Darius Alexander, defensive lineman at Toledo, I had 39 on my big board. He went 65. And then you look at Marcus Bowe, get back 100%. He was 74 on my board. And Cam Scatterbo, you talk about a guy who will bring attention and excitement with his versatility. He'll be a good weapon for whoever the quarterback is starting out the year and certainly down the road. They're hoping, guys, what's going to make or break this draft, this A- will be an A+, or it could be a C- is going to be what happens with Jaxson Dart. And that will certainly impact, this quarterback room will impact Joe Schoen, GM, and Brian Daboll, head coach, for their futures with the organization moving forward.
They hit a home run. I thought they did a fantastic job, especially with the value moving back into the first round with the Jaxson Dart trade. What do you make of that decision by this team?
Responsible spending was how I would describe what the Giants did over the weekend. We'll see what the result is. I do have some reservations about Jaxson Dart and whether he can become an above-average starter in the NFL. I had him 35th overall on the big board, Kev, so he went 10 spots ahead of that. Not a dramatic gap at quarterback, but still, if I thought this guy was surefire, he would have been 5th on the big board, not 35th on the big board. Mel talked about this on our first draft show earlier today, is that the Giants kind of hit players around the mark of where he had them, and in a lot of cases where I had them on my overall big board as well. The big question for me, and I know that we still have 4 months from the start of the NFL, 4.5 months until we get to the start of the regular season. If the Giants, a roster that, of course, had the 3rd worst record in the NFL last year, faces, I would say, the most difficult schedule in the NFL, even without knowing what the order of it is. And they may play in the top heaviest division in the entire league with your defending champion Eagles, and also the Commanders, who played them in the NFC Championship game. So a lot of pressure still on this organization, despite the solid weekend. Things are looking up, Matt, but still a lot of work to do. And I'll be interested to see how they roll out Jaxson Dart.
Yeah, and I really do wish that they had gone a little bit more offense. I know they needed defense. I love Abdul Carter. He was my top player in the draft. Getting him at 3, a really good value. It felt like this front office with Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, head coach, had to basically call their shot on quarterback. They had to eventually say, okay, this is our guy. Jaxson Dart is a player they believe they could build around. But who are the weapons? Malik Neighbors is a very good player at wide receiver. Who are the other weapons? I think right tackle is an area. Evan Neal has been a disappointment as a former first-round pick. Would have loved to have seen them address offensive tackle. Marcus Mbow, where they got him in the draft in the 5th round, was a good value, but he's more of a swing player. Probably going to see a move inside to guard. So I liked what the Giants did at the top of the draft. I thought it kind of fizzled out, and we got to guys. Darius Alexander, good player. He's going to help them stop the run, but I would have loved to have seen a wide receiver on day 3 and probably a right tackle, at least someone that could be a developmental player at that spot. Would have been more where I would have targeted this to get them into that A range. This feels like more of a B draft to me with an A+ player at the top in Abdul Carter.
This is a team grading show when it comes to the drafts, but Matt has brought it up a couple times, the word value. So before we get to other teams, I want to talk about your favorite value specifically per team, per player here. And let's start with Mel. Who was, and no Shedeur Sanders. He's not in this conversation. We've Shedured the conversation in this A block. Give me the value outside of Shedeur Sanders that you like a team made.
There's no question, Kevin, it's Mike Green going to the Baltimore Ravens out of Marshall. He had a phenomenal year getting off the edge and getting after a quarterback with speed and power and intensity and sustaining that intensity throughout the game. Mike Green, edge was a need for the Baltimore Ravens. I had him at 18 on my big board. He goes to pick 59, late 2nd round. Eric DeCosta, one of the great GMs in the National Football League, did an excellent job. Mike Green, late 2nd round pick, an edge rusher who can attack quarterbacks in an AFC loaded with great quarterbacks. It's a neat area. Heck of a value pick.
Kevin, lots of questions about the Falcons' approach late in the 1st round, but at the end of the 3rd round, they got Xavier Watts, 96th overall. I had a 2nd round grade on Watts, who over the past 2 seasons had 13 interceptions, easily the most in all of the FBS. 6 a couple years ago, 7 this past year. This guy is just a football player. He has excellent vision, very good instincts, and should help produce big plays in the back end of that Atlanta defense.
Yeah, if Shedeur is Mel's guy, Luther Burden III is my guy. Going to the Chicago Bears at number 39 overall, my number 13 overall player, and he goes to a great fit with Ben Johnson. He's going to excel in that slot role with DJ Moore and Rome Odunze around him. This is an offense to watch out for. They also added Colston Loveland in the 1st round to go with Cole Kmet at tight end. Luther Burden's yards after catch ability is the best of any receiver in the 2025 draft class, and now he's with a creative, explosive mind of Ben Johnson. It's a perfect marriage.
Or anytime a team trades up near the top of the 2nd round, it's an advertisement that they have a 1st round grade on a player, that they really like him. And Nick Emmanwori is a player that I believe the Seahawks really liked and really fits in Seattle. He looks and plays like Cam Chancellor. The Seahawks have another player like that, and a lot of teams liked Emmanwori in the 1st round. The Seahawks wound up getting him near the top of the 2nd, a great value.